Yes, so I'm going to keep talking. I'm sorry about that. This is our second try. We are having thunderstorms here, so maybe that's what happened. So I'm hoping that you're all hearing me, that I'm not talking to myself. So welcome, everybody. And this week we are going to be talking about ghosts, ghouls, and things that go bump in the night. Are there such things as ghosts? Is there such a thing as a real haunting of a house? Do these things happen? We've been inundated with questions again. We're loving your questions. And as usual, we're going to go to Caroline. You'll see me looking to that side from time to time because Caroline is sitting to my right. And she's going to be asking some of the questions that you've sent in. And we're going to do our best to answer them. So Caroline, why don't we start with the first question? Whoops, before we start with the first question, I just want to say to Mary, who called in last week about an issue with her grandchildren. We did, Mary, get your email. Thank you so much for that. Just remember, darling, if you can, this is a difficult situation and you're not on your own. Our prayers are with you, and just keep us posted from time to time. Let us know how you're doing. You're not on your own, and I do believe that eventually things will work out as they should. So Carolyn, let's go to the next question, please.
Okay, Jacqueline from the UK has a story and then kind of a question.
Okay.
When I was 15 and home alone, 3 fairly heavy objects flew across the room, causing me to move out of harm's way when a light fitting fell down. When my parents returned, they did not believe me. Do you?
Jacqueline from England. That's a great story. Thank you for sharing it. And well, I do, because when you're talking about things sort of flying across the room and so on, it is amazing when someone in the spirit world needs to help you with something, or they need to give you a message. And when I say need, I mean to really need to do something, or to try to protect you from something, then it is amazing what they can do. And often they will use a lot of energy in order to move things, throw things, or whatever, for our benefit. I would say that these objects that you're talking about were not thrown by people that you don't know. I would say that someone you love and who cares about you, who is in the spirit world, wanted to protect you and wanted to get you out of the way so that the light fitting wouldn't fall down on your head. And obviously they succeeded. Many years ago, I heard a story from a very, very good friend of mine, John, also in England. And John, when he was a little boy, I'm going to say when he was about 4 or 5 years old, he was lying in bed asleep. And suddenly he was woken up and he felt the bed shaking. And he looked up, and there, standing in front of the bed, was a ghost. We're using the term ghost loosely. The ghost happened to be his grandmother. And she leaned over the foot of the bed and she looked at him and she said, "Get out." And he was so frightened, he just opened his eyes and was just frozen to the spot. So she leaned forward and got closer to him and she yelled at him again, "Get out." And he was still frozen. So she sort of loomed over him and so as close as she could get to him, and she yelled at him again, "Get out." And by this time he was so scared, he leapt out of bed and went running into his mum and dad, crying and shouting that there was a ghost. He knew who it was. It was his grandmother. He did recognize her, actually. And as he's saying this, and they come running in, and his mom takes him into his arms and says, "It's okay, it's okay," they all heard a massive crash. They went running out into their son's bedroom, and the ceiling had fallen down. on top of the bed. And if this little boy had still been in the bed, he would have been dead. So Grandma, the ghost, bless her, was not trying to scare him, but was trying to protect him. And this is what we find a lot of the time. Do I believe in ghosts? No, I don't. Do I believe in people in the spirit world who come to us, sometimes for good reasons, sometimes for not such good reasons? Do I believe in people in the spirit world? I do. But when I go on ghost hunts or hauntings, people don't quite know what to call these things, so they refer to them as ghosts. So a ghost, in my opinion, is just someone in the spirit world who, for whatever reason, good or bad, is trying to make themselves known, and often is searching and seeking for help. Next question, Carolyn, please.
All right, Madeline from London. What has been your most frightening experience when coming face to face with a ghost? And how did you overcome your fear?
Okay, Madeline from London. It's hard to say what my most frightening experience has been because, to be honest, there have been so many. Probably when I was a little girl, the most frightening experiences were when those faces loomed over me in the night time, even when I was climbing under the bedclothes to try and get away from them or to try and protect myself. They were still there. That was frightening. And as a child, I did not know how to deal with it. One of the most frightening experiences that I had that I remember is when my spirit guide, Grey Eagle, actually put me face to face with an evil entity, we'll call it, because, you know, people who think there isn't evil in the world and there isn't evil in the universe are really not paying attention, because unfortunately there is. I had to face this thing, not on my own. I knew that Grey Eagle was there, but every time I asked him for help, he said, you deal with it. You can do this. You can deal with this. And it was my first experience of having to deal with this type of bad energy. And it was my first experience of having to deal with it on my own. And Grey Eagle put me in that situation for me to discover my strength and for me to discover through my own abilities how to deal with such things, which I did. And it was a very good exercise, because many times since that time, I've had to go into situations that have not always been nice, that not always been good or kind situations. And had I not experienced that first time with Grey Eagle standing by my side, I would not know how to deal with these things. Just because you know how to deal with something doesn't mean that it isn't scary, though. So just so as you know, when I walk into a place where I know that there is something that is going to be tough for me to deal with or hard for me to deal with because it is maybe not so nice, doesn't mean I'm not afraid. It just means that this is when I have to live my faith and believe in myself and to believe in God and to believe in my spirit guide and to believe that they are there to help and to guide me. What was the second question that she asked?
How did you overcome your fear?
How did I overcome it? Again, it's faith. It's an odd thing because I've always believed in God. I don't know where that faith came from. Since I was a little girl, we went to Sunday school when I was, I don't know, perhaps 2 even, and grew up with the knowledge of Christ and grew up with the knowledge of God. And I've doubted many, many things in my life. I've doubted my own abilities. I've doubted my own strength and my own faith, but I've never, ever once doubted God. And so when I'm in a situation which is scary, I pull on the knowledge that I have that God is with me no matter what, and that no matter what, I'm going to be safe. And again, it doesn't mean that you're not scared, but it does mean that when you have that kind of faith and when you live your faith, you're able on a daily basis to deal with all kinds of things that you maybe would not have the courage to do otherwise. Let's have that next question.
Nancy from Phoenix.
Nancy from Phoenix. Hello, Nancy from Phoenix.
She says, what works best to send ghosts on their way?
Well, well, why would you want to, would be my question. Because yes, there are some not very nice entities, but for the most part, the people who come into our houses, the people who we think of as ghosts, are often just people who are sort of knocking on the door, so to speak, saying, will you pay attention to me? Will you notice me? I had occasion many years ago to go into a house. It was a very old cottage, actually. I think it was a 16th century cottage, and there were three young men who lived and worked in this cottage. And I can't remember which book I tell the story in, but it's a really fun, fascinating story. But two of these young men were artists, and they used I'll call it a light box. It was a sort of a weird box that emanated this light. They used it for their art. Anyway, and they had a ghost. I'm sort of narrowing this story down, but they had a ghost, and they really did have a ghost, an entity, an old man who used to live in the cottage many years ago, who would go back from time to time and visit the cottage because it was his home, and he was very fond of this place, and it was the only place that he knew and loved and was at peace with. And so he went one day to visit the cottage, and he saw all of the renovations, and then he obviously met the three young men and became intrigued with them. And so he hung around the cottage. They saw him as a ghost. They heard him, they felt him touch them, and one of the young men actually happened to see him one day and ran from the cottage, refusing to ever go back again. Interestingly, the old man, who was the ghost, was fascinated by this light box. And in fact, the old man thought the light box was a ghost. It all depends on your perspective. Why would you want to get rid of a ghost? Because a ghost usually is someone who is from your family, who's trying to connect with you, or is someone who's trying to help you or to guide you or to steer you in some way. If you really want to get rid of these people, Nancy, then I'm going to say, ask for them to go. Tell them that they're frightening you. Talk to them, as if you know that they're there, almost as if you can see them, and say, you really have to leave because you're scaring us, so get out. And if they don't, call me. Come and fix it for you. Usually they're not meaning any harm whatsoever, and usually the best way is to just try, if you can, and listen to what it is that they want to say to you, and try to figure out the best way to connect with them. Remember, I think it was in the last broadcast that we did, or might have been the one before, when I suggested sit down and listen and pay attention. And if you sit down and you listen and you pay attention, you connect with your soul and you connect with the heartbeat of your soul, then you'll be able to connect with these people who are simply trying to say to you, we love you, we're around you, notice us, pay attention. Next question.
We have a question from YouTube.
YouTube?
Yes. Can you be possessed by a ghost?
You can actually be possessed by a ghost. It has happened, and I've had people come to me who have, let's say, been possessed by a ghost. There's a great story in a book written by Michael Benteen, and this book is called A Door Marked Summer. It's an old book, but you can still get it. And in that book, Michael Bentine talks about his father, who was a spiritual medium, and he talks about a man who was in fact possessed by an evil entity. The story is fascinating, and what the story tells us, what it explains to us, is that you can only become possessed if you welcome that possession. If you delve into things and you say, okay, you can come in, and you welcome them. It's your choice at the end of the day. There are a variety of ways, if you find yourself in a situation like that, there are a variety of ways to get out of them. You can go and see your pastor at your church, or you can go and have an exorcism, or you can go and see someone like me who will tell you what's going on. It's extremely rare, very rare. I don't want anyone to panic about it, but it only happens if you have welcomed them in. So don't. Next question.
Tom from Ohio. How do you know if a spirit is good or bad?
Well, Tom from Ohio, you know if a spirit, a person in the spirit world, you know if they're good or bad because you can feel their energy. We're all sensitive enough to be aware of what is good around us and what is bad around us. If you feel someone is around you and you get an uneasy feeling, then you move on. You're connecting with them, remember. You're trying to connect with them as well as them trying to connect with you. Just because someone's trying to connect with you doesn't mean that you have to connect with them. There's no rule that says you have to listen to people in the spirit world. Tell them to go away. If you know, as we just had a question, how do you send spirits away? How do you send people away? It's people in the spirit world away. Just tell them to go away. Tell them to go away. If you are not being sensible, and if you're just playing around with this stuff, and if you think it's fun to, you know, connect with anybody and everybody, I mean, think of it this way. Would you leave your front door open for anyone and everyone to walk in? And the answer would be, if you're sensible, no, you wouldn't. The answer is you wait for someone to knock on the door and then you decide whether you're going to let them in or not. And still the decision is yours to open the door or not to open the door. So don't open the door. And, you know, keep the door firmly locked. Don't dabble in things that you don't know anything about. And if you do get yourself into trouble, or you do find yourself getting afraid of things or whatever, you know, just find someone like me, get some help and advice, go to your nearest church. There are lots of places you can go to. Again, I'm going to say to you, there are no such things as ghosts, because there are people, and there are people in the spirit world, and some are good and some are not so good. And remember, life is like that. The people we meet on the street, some are good and some are not so good. The people who come knocking at your door, some are good, some are not so good. And so you don't welcome the people that aren't so good. Don't welcome them. Don't acknowledge them. If you find yourself getting nervous about it, tell them, go away. I'm not interested. You're scaring me, so go away. As a final last resort, if that does not work, I always tell people this. Believe in God, believe in your faith. When you go to bed at night, put your hands across your chest like so. Right hand over left hand. And then simply say to God, you know, these things are frightening me and I would like them to go away. I'm going to trust that you're going to send them away for me. Trust in God. Let go. You've sent out your prayer to God. He's there to protect you. It will happen. It simply will happen. Let it go. Next question.
Okay, Thomas from Georgia. Do you have spirits constantly wanting your attention?
Thomas from Georgia.
Yes.
Thomas from Georgia. Do I have people in the spirit world wanting my attention? Yes, I do, all the time. But I have Grey Eagle. And Grey Eagle is my protector, if you like. He's the one who says you can come in. He's the one who says you can't come in. He opens the door. If he doesn't want to open the door, he won't open the door. If he doesn't want to open the door, you won't get in. It's as simple as that. And he's my protector. But I know there are lots of people who, you know, are afraid if they feel someone in their house, if they feel that they have spirits in their house, and they're afraid that the house is haunted. And occasionally that does happen. 9 out of 10 times when I go to a haunted house or a haunted building, which I have been to on so too many occasions to count, so many times when that happens, I usually find it's because it's family or it's friends who want to say, I'm here, or they need to get a message to you. There are times when it's perhaps someone who's trapped themselves. And when I say they've trapped themselves, they've chosen to not move on for whatever reason. It could be a variety of reasons. I was once invited many years ago to a haunted mansion, and so many people had seen this haunting. Again, I write this story in one of my books. It was an amazing and a fascinating story, and in fact the place was haunted by the ghost of a woman, or the spirit of a woman who had her husband had committed suicide, and it was a very tragic tale. And she went back to her home, which happened to be this mansion. She went back to the mansion, and she was so traumatized by what happened, and she died. And when it was her time to cross over, she refused any help, and she refused to go to the light, and she just wanted to stay where she was in this home. So she, by her own fears, she trapped herself in this situation for years and years. And I think it was something like more than 50 years. She trapped herself in this house. And of course, she became interested in the comings and goings of the house. She became interested in what was going on. The house had actually been, the mansion had actually been turned into, it was now a corporate building, and they used a lot of the house for parties and Christmas balls and so on. And they also used it for, they had classrooms in the house. It was a huge place. And she became fascinated with that. Then a few weeks before I actually was invited to go there, of course, we know there's no such thing as coincidence. A few weeks before I was invited to go there was this woman's brother, who was very young when she passed. He died. And too long a story to tell, but he came and asked me if I would help her. So we went to the haunted house to help this woman and to get her unstuck, which is what we did. So many interesting stories. Next question, Carolyn.
Isabella from Arkansas.
Yes.
Does everyone have a spirit guide?
Does everyone have a spirit guide? No, I think we answered this question last time. I think we did.
It came in last week,
but we didn't. Oh, okay. All right. Well, we all have our loved ones in the spirit world. We all have our family in the spirit world. We all have someone. But a spirit guide is a very special and very knowledgeable entity who usually only works with people like me who do this work all the time. They only work with people who are involved in the spiritual world, in the spiritual realm, on a regular daily basis. It's a little bit like saying, that the top surgeon in the hospital is going to walk around with the students all day, every day. And we know that's not true. He's far too busy, number one, and he has far too much knowledge. And there are other people between him and the student who are going to help the student. So the people who are between us and the spirit guides, if you like, are our family, our friends, and our loved ones in the spirit world who want to help us and who want to protect us. As well as my spirit guide, Grey Eagle, I also have my father, who often comes around to let me know that he's around. And there are others as well, but mostly I have Grey Eagle and I have my father. For most people, you will have your fathers, mothers, grandmothers, grandfathers, uncles, aunts, and so on and so forth. And they will be the people who guide you and who steer you. And they're the people you know or know of, because you may not sometimes have known them, but know of them from your family. And they're the ones who will guide you. Back to ghosts, just for a second. The ghost that's in your house will often be maybe your grandmother tapping you on the shoulder, and all she wants from you is an acknowledgement. Okay, I see you. Okay, I hear you. I know you're around. And if it were my grandmother, I would be saying, and stay around. Hopefully, stay around and help me. I know that my father is around for my daughter, and hopefully for my grandson. My daughter, when she was quite a bit younger, has seen her grandfather on many occasions since he passed, and she saw him as a ghost, but in fact he was simply her guide, trying to help her and trying to steer her. But I remember one night when she was just she was a little girl. She was not a little girl. She was about 14 or 15, maybe not so little after all then. And she was an extremely untidy child, I have to tell you. I would go into her bedroom and I'd find ice cream dishes, old ice cream dishes under the bed, or old banana skins under the bed. I mean, she left things all over the place. Now she's an adult. She is a neatnik. She's really, she's very, very neat, much neater than I am, in fact. But on this particular occasion that I'm thinking of, it was sort of late in the night, and I was going through all sorts of stuff of my own, and I was lying in bed and I was crying and I was saying, God help me, and Grey Eagle help me, and somebody give me a sign. You know how you do those things. Somebody give me a sign, please give me a sign. I'm looking for a sign. And all of a sudden I hear this noise coming from my daughter's bedroom. And I leapt up out of bed and I opened the door, and there is her hairdryer, which she's left on the floor, of course. It's still plugged in, but it's switched off. And there is her hairdryer blasting away merrily on the floor. She's sound asleep in bed. And of course, there's no one else around. Well, that was my sign. That was my, you're not alone. Did I really want to go and find the hairdryer blowing away all by itself? There was no way it could switch itself on, because it had one of those, those hard catches on the end. There's no way it could have switched itself on, even though it was plugged in. Unless someone in the spirit world was tampering with it, was playing with it. I checked and double checked. I stayed with my daughter for a while, checking that she was actually asleep and that she wasn't playing a trick on me. And she was sound asleep, totally, absolutely out for the count. But someone in the spirit world was determined that I was going to get that sign that I was not alone. And although it scared me, it comforted me. And I went back to bed and I stopped asking for a sign, at least for that one night. You might have seen that as a ghostly happening. as a ghostly haunting. In a way, yes, you can say it. Yes, it was, but the real explanation is my father or Grey Eagle or someone in the spirit world who loved me was determined that because I was in such great need of reassurance, that they were going to just reassure me in the best way that they could. So hauntings, I've been into places where there have been evil entities. In my book, A Matter of Life and Death, I talk about the man, his name was Charles Brandt. This is a true story. Of course, all my stories are true. But this man, I think he's probably, he's on the FBI list. He's dead, of course. He's no longer wanted. He was never really wanted because he was never known to be a serial killer until, and you have to read the story to know more about this, but so, and until this situation happened. But he, having died, was then pursuing a young woman who had escaped him, and he'd had fantasies of doing awful things to her as he did with her friend. Charles Brandt is a serial killer. Not knowing anything about Charles Brandt and not knowing anything about the situation, I was invited to go to see if I could help this young woman. I took a friend of mine with me and a friend of mine's daughter with me as well. And I was putting on my makeup. I was staying at my friend's house. I was putting on my makeup and I was thinking, oh, well, you know, 9 times out of 10, these things don't pan out. It's not what people think it is. People get nervous about it. Their imaginations start to run riot with it, or, you know, whatever. So I'm thinking, you know, the chances are it's not going to be too serious. And then I heard Grey Eagle's voice. And Grey Eagle was saying to me, Rosemary, pay attention, pay attention. And then I knew this was serious, and it was something that was real, and that I needed to pay attention so that I could handle it in a right way and in a proper way. And as I've said, I tell the story in my book, A Matter of Life and Death. If you are nervous about these things, don't read it. It has a very wonderful ending, I have to say, because as I've just said to you, even though there are evil entities about, which of course there are, I mean, anyone who thinks that there aren't needs to have a reality check. Take a look at the world and all the evil that is in the world, in this world of ours. But don't get afraid of it, because if you are a soul and the light of God is within you, as it is with most of us, evil cannot hurt you. It cannot harm you. It is only when you let it in that it can hurt you. Remember that. It's only when you let it in. And other than that, you know, if you ever have an experience that makes you nervous, just pray. Just ask for God to come help you. In this particular situation, I went into the house and I heard the stories of what had happened, and then I had to come face to face with Charles Brandt, who knew that I was there to get rid of him. The only reason that he was able to haunt this place and terrify this young woman was because he was feeding on her fear. And evil feeds on fear. Just remember that. And as much as you might be frightened, God will always protect you. And if you have that always at the back of your mind, evil cannot touch you and it cannot penetrate you and it cannot get in. Remember this. There are 2 rooms. Imagine that there are 2 rooms and there is a door between them. One room is filled with dark and the other room is filled with light. Okay? The dark room represents evil, and the room filled with light represents all the goodness and the love of God. If you open the door that separates them, the light infiltrates the dark and drives it away. It happens every time. Dark cannot combat light. Shall we do that again? The dark cannot combat light. Light combats dark. So never be afraid. So if you read this story in A Matter of Life and Death, if you read the story, it is a bit of a scary story, no doubt about it. There's some scary things that happen out there, but God and our angels win out. They do. And just remember that as you're reading it. God and our angels will always win out over evil. Yes, there are hauntings. Yes, of course, there are things that we don't like and we don't want to happen. Of course, things dark exists. Evil exists. Does evil exist in my world? No. From time to time, I've had to deal with it, and it's gone. Does evil exist in your world? I don't think so. I think if you are a person of light, if you believe in God and you believe in goodness, even if you don't believe in God, if you believe in goodness and you believe in truth and you believe in doing the right thing, evil can't touch you, can't penetrate you, can't get in. Don't let it in. It can't get in. It won't happen. Next question.
Okay, we have 3 questions actually. 3 people wrote in. Denise B, she lost her sister in 2015 and she wants to know if she's still around her. Stephanie from Italy wants to know if she has angels. And Barbara wants to know, how is her mom?
All right. Barbara from where, do we know?
We don't know.
We don't know. All right. So who is the first one?
Denise.
Denise, you're asking me a question I think you already know the answer to. You know your sister's with you, don't you really? So all I'm doing is confirming what you know in your heart. Our loved ones in the spirit world are just as keen to connect with us as we are to connect with them. They're just as keen to remain a part of the family as we are for them to remain a part of the family. So, you know, even though I'm not connecting personally with your sister, my experience tells me, and I also have a sense, you know that she's there. So trust yourself and trust in the process and trust your sister. She's with you. And someone from Italy wants to know about angels. Stephanie. Hello, Stephanie from Italy. And yes, our angels are all around us. You want to know if you have your own personal angels? Is that what the question is? Yeah. We all have our own personal angels who come from time to time to help us and to guide us. But remember, because I know I've said this before on another broadcast, angels are... they're a special entity. They're a special and beautiful entity. I've seen angels many, many times and been wowed every time. They are messengers of God. They are not there to do our bidding. They're not there to do what we would like them to do. They're not there to save us, or they don't have any interest in our agenda. They only follow God's agenda. So if God sends them to us for a particular reason, they will come. If God says to them, we need angels present at this moment or this moment, there they are for us. So do you have angels around you? You have your family, you have your loved ones. And I always say that they are our personal, private little angels, because our loved ones in the spirit world love us to pieces and they want to guide and steer us. And do you have those incredible beings of light, those messengers of God? From time to time, I'm sure you do. And Barbara wants to know, how is her mum? And we get so many personal questions like this. And Barbara, I would like to be able to answer you on a personal level about your mum, but we we have thousands of questions. So your question is representative of all of those other questions. Barbara, I'm sure she's fine. I'm sure that she's okay. Next question.
Okay, this is the grand finale.
The grand finale.
Question.
Oh boy, are we at that time already? The personal question.
The personal question.
How long do we have for this question?
About 10 minutes.
Okay, all right.
What is one of the things that people would be surprised to know about you?
Ooh. Well, I snore from time to time. My daughter tells me I snore loudly. Never heard myself snore. Let's see, on a more serious note. What is it? What's the question? What
are one of the things that people would be surprised to know about you?
People would surprised to learn about me. Well, you may find this, you may find you're unable to believe this, because I know people do all the time. I know I'm the kind of person who, I seem to be very gregarious. I pretty much can talk to anybody, which I can. I stand in front of thousands and sometimes hundreds of thousands of people. When I'm on a TV show, it's millions of people. So if I tell you that I'm really very shy, a very shy person, you might raise your eyebrows and say, how can that be? So I'm going to give you a tiny bit of insight. Some of you hopefully are going to relate to this. As much as I can stand on a stage, and as much as I can talk to people, and as much as I can, without even thinking about it, put my arms around someone and give them a hug or a kiss, as much as I can do all of those things, I find it very hard to walk into a social setting by myself. I find it very difficult to, I would never, for instance, sit at a bar and have a drink by myself. I would never, unless I really, really had to, I would never go and sit in a restaurant by myself. I'm very, very shy in that way. And it's a conundrum, let's say. It's an odd thing, because, you know, for someone who can get up and talk in front of millions of people and not even think twice about it, which I don't get nervous about those things at all. On a one-on-one personal level, I find I'm a very shy and almost introverted person, and I like to keep my personal life personal and my private life private, although I'm now sharing with you one of my very private and personal things. But I think there are a lot of people like me out there. I think there are a lot of people who find difficulty, you know, on a personal level. And I'm laughing. I'm going to share something else that's really private with you. This is probably why I don't have a partner in my life, because I find it very hard on a personal level to become serious with someone, or to trust that someone is going to take me as I really am. And part of that is because I think, you know, so many people see me and see me on these shows and see how easily I find it, conversation, and perhaps get the wrong impression of me. So very, very few people, only my closest friends would know how really shy I am. I think that's it. Yes, boy, did I give myself away there? Anyway, there's a little bit of insight into me. So if you want to join us on our hangout next week, or if you want to follow us on YouTube, our email address is www.rosemaryaltea.com. How easy could that be to forget? We do have a Facebook. We are on Twitter. What else are we on? We are
Meetup.com.
We're on meetup.com. Yes, which I like to be on meetup.com because it's a little bit more personal. So if those of you on YouTube don't know what Meetup is, look it up. Go on the web and look it up. You can also go to our store and find out all the good things that we have going on in the store. And as I said last week, we are very excited about our new audio, the Eagle and the Rose audio edition, which celebrates 20 years. Oh, do I look that old? Probably so. Do I feel that old? Only sometimes. But if you'd like to follow us, if you'd like to know more about us, feel free to email us. Please keep your questions coming in. We will be here next week. We will be doing this again next week. So every week. And before I go, do I have time for this quickly? We are going to be doing a little cooking as well. So as well as these little conversations that we have and answering your questions, we are from time to time going to put on a little cooking show for you. So watch for that and watch for news for that. In the meantime, have a wonderful day. Find joy in your life no matter what. And we'll see you next time. God bless you all. Are we done?